All right. Hi, everyone. How you going? The illusion of causality and why we see what isn't there. Now, have you ever noticed that deep down, even when your logical mind knows better, that there's still a part of you that still falls for the illusion of causality? It's a fascinating quirk. Now, I'll give you an actual example so you can see what I'm talking about, right? And it's a sort of primal instinct that sort of maybe it predates the sophisticated logic of our prefrontal cortex. So think about this as a common experience, right? You're looking at someone's chat on a messenger app, and as you look, a notification pops up that they're typing you a message, and there's a little voice, right? You thought, oh, maybe because I looked, they must know I'm here, and that's why they started typing. Now, you know as an adult that that's actually absurd, and your rational mind immediately kicks in and recognizes how absurd that is. But we know that obviously that couldn't have happened. So the prefrontal cortex kicks in, armed with enough awareness and education to recognize the sheer um, illogical nature of it. But here's the crucial point, right? While that specific example is obviously false, this isn't always the case. So let's upgrade the example, right? What happens if we make it a bit more complex? So let's look at a second scenario, and then I'll give a third one, and then that'll be the end of it. So imagine you're dealing with a family member who has developed a mental illness with age. And you know that this illness exists. You've seen it run in your family when you were a child, and there were older and older people where that sort of happened to them. You've seen it in other families. You've read about it. You've spent years reading about it, the symptoms, when it starts to appear, at what age, how it manifests, how people get upset at it, how people deal with it, the refusal to take medication, all those things that you've seen, right? Now you're armed with that knowledge, and yet, despite all that knowledge, some of you might have been through this. You will recognize that when that person treats you differently or start to accuse you of things that can't even be true, like, that you're hiding in their fridge, or, you're messing with demons that are giving her or him curses, or all these type of things, or strange gossip that only in their mind, you still take it personally to some degree. You get hurt that, oh my God, that was my grandfather, my auntie, my uncle, I don't know, my neighbor. They used to be good to me. Why are they being so bad to me, right? So you can still take it personally. And it requires a tremendous amount of awareness and constant re education in that moment to recognize that there is absolutely no causal relationship between their accusation and anything you've actually done. It is their illness projecting a reality out of their own head, a reality that is completely independent of all observations, facts, anything else that you would want to contradict it. You can't say to them, this can't be true because of X. I wasn't even here. I wasn't in the country. How can you think that? No, 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 no. That's what you would say. You're lying to me. These type of things that I'm sure you've heard, right? So in that particular case, it might be also easy to see that causality in that particular case is an illusion as well, in that you are not actually causing this person to treat you differently. Okay. So let's now take it to the third example, right? What happens if the person is not suffering from a mental illness? They're completely fine as far as you're concerned, defined as fine, right? But let's say that they hold a conviction that they believe is profoundly true. Whatever that belief is, it doesn't have to be religious, doesn't have to be political. It can just be that, for example, they are absolutely convinced that being a gay is against nature, for example. And some people believe that, some people don't. Or it could be that how could you possibly drink spirits after having wine? I'm just thinking of stuff to pop my head. Like, it doesn't matter what the belief actually is. It could be, how could you eat this type of seafood, or this type, whatever it is, right? So now they actually think that you're weird or you're something wrong with you because you don't share that particular belief, right? So it's just a different way of seeing the world. Now, in this particular case, do you take it personally? Now, most people all the time will take it personally, right? But then, if that's the case, why did you not take it personally in the other two examples? So you might say here, okay, well, in this particular example, there is causality because they are disliking you for what you're doing. But hold on a second. Again, it's not something you've done, but it's a violation in their world of their reality. your existence, your behavior, you're saying something that's violating what they believe to be something that's correct. In other words, it is their belief that's causing the problem, not you, right? And in that particular case, therefore, you can also see causality as an illusion. Okay? It's the person operating within their own particular reality, within their own internal framework. So you might say to yourself, well, then isn't that everybody? Well, the answer is actually yes, if you take it to its extreme. The answer is yes. Now, the difference in many cases is that there are more than enough people to share in someone's reality. So then it sort of seems to become objective. Now, I'll give you one case. Let's say you're walking down the street and you step on the tail of a dog and the dog yelps. Now, you didn't mean to do it, but the owner then empathizes with the dog's pain. So then you now have two people or two entities, two life beings, being the dog and the owner, who now recognize that you're stepping on their tail caused pain. And so they will say that it's your fault for stepping on the tail, even if you meant it or you didn't mean it, right? So in that particular case, we then say, oh, it's really what happened because we have more than one person who agrees with that case. And it's the same thing, for example, and you'll notice this when you look around. We come back to the view of, let's say someone thinks being gay is against nature, right? And that's their business. I'm not here to judge what people think in this particular video, right? But what I'm saying is that they will then hang out with other people who also have that view. So then if, let's say there's 10 people who have that view altogether, and you happen to, your existence as either not having that view for whatever reason violates their reality, well, then they can see that reality as objective in that case, right? But is it really? Well, it's up to the people to decide. And when there are more of them together, it starts to produce that illusion. But once again, it's not you actively going out there to cause their anger. It's that your existence violates their particular worldview. So it really depends on what the view is that someone's holding. So again, it's not causal. Okay, but that's quite abstract, but you might have to think about that a few times to come up with an idea as to how it could be causal. Okay, if you go wide enough where everyone agrees, then we start to assume it's causal, right? Where let's say 90% of people all share that view. So, I mean, one particular case is where we have a psychopath, right? So a psychopath, almost everyone is not a psychopath. So then we can all say that person is a psychopath. But really what it is that it's our view is that this person is a psychopath. So to some degree, it's objective. And also to some degree, um, it's not that that person is deliberately being a psychopath, for example. They might actually be following what they might think in their own head is natural. But we all recognize that that is something that's obscene, right? And it also disallows the functioning of society if psychopaths were allowed to run free, which we've seen everywhere on social media now, when there's anonymity. And so people can say what they want, as nasty as they've seen. And I'm sure we've all seen how absolutely nasty certain things are. There are things there that are worse than what I used to hear in public in the 80s, when people used to openly say things about how happy they were to hit their wife if she, if she should shut up and not talk too much. I mean, I remember hearing that as a kid, and this was normal for people in that generation. And so that's a whole other story, because once again, they might have thought that was normal. It's not like that they had our thoughts to recognize how obscene that was. And does that mean that there are people here today that had they grown up in that era, the sum of their thoughts would be different, such that they would then hold that view as potentially normal? So this is coming to my last point, okay? The understanding of being the sum of your thoughts. What is you? If you consider yourself being the sum of your thoughts, then you can look at that as an average across time. So that as your thoughts build, given whatever beliefs you happen to have, they shape what your next thoughts will be. And then so you end up getting this long-term average, which creates this identity, which could be a very, very different person to what you would have been having grown up somewhere else, maybe in Nazi Germany, or maybe in medieval Europe, or sub-Saharan Africa, whatever it is, right? So what it is to be you is evolving beyond a static definition, and others are also doing the same. Okay, and this can fundamentally change how we navigate our interactions. Okay, so it's like you might meet someone at one point, and then 6 years later you see them again, And they've had so many dramatic experiences in that time that the sum of their thoughts is now completely different to what it would have been had they not had those dramatic experiences. And then, of course, the more dramatic an experience, the more weight it attaches to them. And so it can completely shift a person to such a point that they might then blame you for something you've done in their mind, that had they had a different average amount of thoughts or a different sum of thoughts, what you did might not have been a problem. So again, it's not causal in the sense that you have done something to them. It's a combination of the sum of their thoughts and hence a subsequent belief system or worldview, and that you violate that view. Can you see it that way? It makes things less personal and it allows you to have more compassion for other people because you recognize, at least to some degree, that they do not know what they do. All right? And that's really what I was going to say in this video. So it's a pleasure to see you all. And until next time, take life one smack at a time.